It is 1 o'clock sharp on my clock. Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here with us, and just by showing up, you are already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, we continue our celebration of Women's History Month by featuring 3 incredibly talented and accomplished women who are at the top of their respective organizations in music publishing and music supervision. Before I get started, let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please feel free to introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the interview. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address speakers and attendees. I want to thank our sponsors, for without their support, we could not keep this free. I want to thank First Horizon Bank, Bufkin Baker, Four Roses Bourbon, the Fairlane Hotel, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Lightning 100, Tennessee Brew Works, Moo TV, Jive Printing, Project Music, and Cushmaster's brand of CBD products. So let's get the party started. In today's host seat, we welcome Alyssa Coleman. Alyssa is Chief Operating Officer of Apico Music and Records, overseeing the day-to-day operations as well as the business development and global licensing of the music publishing, record, and film catalogs for one of the world's foremost independent entertainment companies. A strong advocate for indie companies, Alyssa is the first woman executive appointed to influential positions on both sides of the music business, including the music publishing and the recording industry, holding seats on the Mechanical Licensing Collective, MLC, and the Recording Industry Association of America, boards. In 2019, Billboard named Alyssa to its top indie players list, top digital players list, and top women in music list. In 2020, she was named to Billboard's Power List and again to its top indie player list and top women in music list. In addition to the above, she's also a member of NARIS, AIGA, NWIFT, CMA, ACM, CSUSA, and the National Arts Club, and is a lifetime member of the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Alyssa, we got to talk about that last distinction sometime today. I want to hear more about that. Welcome, by the way.
Thank you. A lot of acronyms going on.
Hell yeah. Acronym soup. And joining Alyssa as today's special guests are 2 rock stars from the world of music supervision, Anita Ratner and Allison Schneider. As SVP of Creative Music Strategy, Anita oversees music supervision across iconic Viacom CBS cable brands including BET, CMT, Comedy Central, Logo, MTV, Paramount Network, Nickelodeon, Showtime, Smithsonian Channel, and VH1. She's worked on award-winning programming including Yellowstone, RuPaul's Drag Race, The Real World, and she's produced numerous soundtracks. Anita also leads business development and operations for Viacom Music Publishing and the Viacom Music Library. And she's committed to leading efforts to increase representation for women and people of color within the music created for Viacom CBS content, and to creating more diverse network of music supervisors working on shows across the brands. Anita is a member of both the Recording Academy and the Television Academy and serves as a committee lead for She Is the Music, and is on the Dean's Advisory Board of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Hofstra University. And our third amazing guest today is Allison Schneider. As SVP and Head of Creative Music Services, Allison oversees music supervision and licensing for original content produced by Universal Studio Group, as well as marketing and promotions across NBC Universal's family of networks including NBC, USA, Sci-Fi, Bravo, E, Universal Kids, CNBC, MSNBC, and Oxygen. USG produces original programming for many cable and broadcast networks, along with streaming platforms that fall outside of the NBCU umbrella. Some of Allison's noteworthy projects, past and present, include the Umbrella Academy, The Center, Homecoming, Mr. Robot, The Office, Heroes, and the Olympics. Allison is a member of the Television Academy and Recording Academy and frequently volunteers as an active member of the local community outreach committee called Love the 818. She lives in LA with her daughter and partner and is preparing for an empty nest syndrome, which I want to hear more about today too. Please welcome these three amazing guests to the smartest people in the room. Take it away, Alyssa.
Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate the invitation. When Tom asked me to host a panel with him, the first thing that came to mind is who out of all the women I know, and trust me, in all my years, there's so many great women I know in this business, could share so much and have so much synergy together. And Allison and Anita and I, aside from the fact that our names all begin with the letter A, and I didn't have to go far in my address book to put us all together, all share a very similar story in how we got to where we are and how long we've been at the companies we've been with, because we've been at the top of our field at the same companies for so many years. So before we really, this is really an informal conversation between the three of us to chat back and forth and whatever. And I invite you to put your questions into the Q&A and into the chat. And thank you so much to everybody that's showed up, because I see so many of our friends out there in the audience, so many names and some new names. And really, thank you so much. So the first thing we really wanted to talk about is, when I started in this business, and I'm a little bit older than the two of you, and I went to music business school, nobody knew what that meant when I went to music business program. Okay. They had no idea what I would get a job doing. And I certainly had no idea about music licensing. It wasn't until I got my first job at the Harry Fox agency doing sync licensing for television that I even heard about music licensing. Didn't even know that was a career or that anybody did that. So Allison and Anita, how did you get to learn about this part of the industry, and how did you make your way into the industry?
Who's going first? Me? It's interesting. I mean, I always loved music in media. I think I'm part of the generation that always kind of points to the John Hughes films as being such an inspiration growing up, and knowing that was something I was very interested in pursuing. But it really just kind of happened by accident. My ex-husband now, but boyfriend at the time, got a job with Evan Greenspan, who is one of the founding fathers of music licensing and music supervision. And he had an independent company, and Rob went and worked for him and started doing clearances and cue sheets. And I was in college at the time. And so I was looking to kind of get as much experience as I could. So Evan was kind enough to bring me in and put me in charge of doing cue sheets for Star Search and It's Showtime at the Apollo. And I know Land of the Lost. I think it was maybe a reboot of Land of the Lost. But at the same time, he also taught me how to do clearances. So I learned the ropes there, so that while I was starting to look for career opportunities when I was just shy of finals week in college, one of the things I could point to was the experience I'd gotten from Evan. And I used that in an interview with Warner Special Products. And I knew how to talk enough that I ended up getting hired during finals week to go and be an A&R assistant in their film and TV music department, which at that point was the Time Warner licensing arm, which is now Warner Strategic Marketing. So that was my start. I kind of fell into it and then loved it so much, just went from there.
Anita?
Yeah, so I also was a huge fan of music my whole life, and I knew I always wanted to end up doing something in the music business, but I never really knew quite what. So I had a job at CBS. That was my first real job in the international sales department, and I would write press releases for syndicated shows. So like if we were syndicating 60 Minutes around the world and there was a piece of music that the rights weren't in place for, I would have to indicate that on the press release. And I had no idea what that meant. I knew it was important, but I had absolutely no idea what that meant. I just had to put it in the release. I think legal told me to put it there. And then it turned out there was a job available at MTV doing clearances in the syndication department. And that kind of was what got me in there, but I still didn't really know anything about it. I remember when I found out that you actually had to get permission to sing a song on television. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, really? That's crazy. And I just learned on the job. And I had, the person who hired me really wanted somebody who understood syndication, and she taught me how to clear. And then that led to having to music supervise all these old shows that had music that was not cleared, and find replacement music for it when home video started. So really dating myself there, but that's how I got my start.
Well, we're all gonna date ourselves no matter what. But I have to say also the cameo by your dog, if anybody saw, that was so sweet. He was sitting there like, oh, he wanted to be part of it. But like we were talking earlier, just about all these people that we met along the way, like Evan, and people that kind of started this music clearance business when there was no such thing. I mean, when I started working at the Harry Fox agency, I had this huge Rolodex. And for those of you who don't know what a Rolodex is, go Google it. And then, but it had cards that would say, the name of the publisher, their phone number, and how much to charge for a song in the Tonight Show. And if I was ever stuck and I didn't know who owned the song, I would call Al Cohn at Warner Brothers, and he would say, oh, it's my song, it's my song. And I would just clear it, and it never was his song. And then we'd always have to work backwards into that. But who were people that inspired you during this time, and who mentored you during this time to really bring you into this business that way? Anita, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so very early on at MTV, the woman who brought me in had to leave for a family medical reason. So I was kind of just on there on my own, having to just figure it out. And there was a man named Ed Paparo, who I think Alisa knows. And he was kind enough to pick up the phone. I had a million calls. It was just the bat phone to him all day long. And he had come from Polygram. He was one of the few people who worked in TV Sync at the company at the time. Everybody was really, there were a lot of music people there, but it was more for music videos back in the day at MTV. And he taught me everything I know. I mean, he was absolutely incredible. And just gracious, and he was there, and I'll never forget that.
Allison?
I think I have two waves. So it started at Warner's. I had three people: Jennifer Jesperson, Bill Bishop, and Bob Fukuyama, who's still with Warner Strategic Marketing, who I was the assistant for, and they were all so nurturing and just really genuine and loving, and wanted to try to help me learn as much as I could about licensing and about the fundamentals of music supervision, which was a new thing at that time. I mean, that's how long I've been in the business. It wasn't really a job. It was kind of a job, but not really. And then when I left Warner's, I went to NBC, and I was brought in by a woman named Martha Hanrahan, who I worked for until the day she retired. And she was just amazing. I mean, really became a mother figure to me also, but would hear my wacky ideas and always support me. And she led with so much grace, and she was such an expert in her field. And I'm still in touch with her. Her daughter works with me now, which is nice. I get to continue on the legacy. But I never in my career, and I feel so fortunate with those core three and then Martha, never really felt unsupported, which I think is why I've always been at NBC too since then. It's always been a really nurturing environment, and I've always felt like there's growth, and my growth has been supported, which is extremely, important for everyone.
It's so interesting to me because, like, as I mentioned, one of the reasons I chose the two of you to do this panel is because of the synergies between our experiences. And when I started in this business, nobody knew what to do. And I was working for a woman who they made the head of the department, who had no experience in this field, didn't know anything about music licensing. And they're just like, oh, here, handle this. You'll manage that. And then when I came to ABCO, there was a lot more knowledge and a lot more experience in knowing how to manage the publishing and the master licensing of things. And I was able to learn a lot of different strategies in negotiation and licensing. But, the challenge has always been the work-life balance, especially when you're working for a company for so many years. And we all have children. We've all had, these different things, we've all had children while we're working at our companies. And just that experience of making it through that work-life balance. I mean, how do you manage that? I guess not really today, Allison and Anita, because today it's another story, but like generally prior to a year ago, okay, like the work-life balance was different. And everything that's happened in your lives has happened simultaneous with your career. So can you talk a little bit about that and how that experience was for you?
Yeah, sure. So I've been through, as everybody has, I've been through a lot of ups and downs. I had a health crisis 10 years ago, and both of my parents passed away within a really short period of time, and I'm an only child, so it's a lot. But I think that, everybody's got personal things that they have to figure out how to balance, and you still have to do your job. But I really have to say that the environment, the team that I've built is really not competitive. It's a lot of people who support each other. We all have each other's backs. I think it's a real collaborative environment, and I'm really proud of that. And I think that because the people who brought me in were so understanding during my times of crisis and gave me the space that I needed. I never really worried that I wouldn't have a job when I came back if I took a leave of absence or whatever. They were always so supportive. One of those people, I have to say, Allison and I both had him as a boss. It's George Cheeks, who's now back at CBS. And he really gave me all the time that I needed to deal with my stuff. I wasn't worried about my job, and my team really supported me. And I really try to foster that environment. And, many people in my group have had issues, and I hope that everybody understands that there's always space for people to do what they need to do, and they always have a place to come back to. And it's that collaboration, non-competitive environment, and just really a supportive group of people. It's meant the world. I can't even imagine having to deal with any of those crises and have to worry about your job on top of it. Job security.
Yeah. I think similarly to Anita, having the support was really fundamental. We talked earlier about we all had a lot of things happen to us in our lives while we've been in our companies, and we've been parents. And, I went through a divorce when Marin was 3. So it was trying to figure out how to balance things with her dad, which fortunately it was very also loving split, and very friendly. So we were able to kind of work our schedules around business trips, panels, whatever I had going on. I had the loss of a parent, I had the loss of a sister. And there were so many things that have occurred. And at the same time, trying to raise this child as a single mom, starting when she was little. And it really helped that, when Martha was there, she was so amazing because she was also a mother of 2 children and was doing a similar balance. And I think having that relatability helps a lot. And if you cry when your boss leaves, that's a pretty good sign that they were a pretty amazing boss. So when she retired, there were a lot of tears. And, Anita was talking about George. When George left to go back to Viacom, there were a lot of tears again, because once again, there was somebody who just got it and supported that. And that's something that I do very much for my team as well. You bring a child into the world, I think it's extremely important, or you have an aging parent or whatever your situation is, family first. And we say that, which is why we work in teams also, so that people can deal with health crises. They can be there for their child. They can deal with unexpected things that come up, and somebody always has their back. And I honestly can't imagine what it would be like to not have that. And as a leader, that's, I think, my most important role. And it's served me well in this pandemic, is to make sure that people always feel safe and that they're able to live their lives and get done what they need to get done.
Do you think that it's different as women than it is for your male counterparts? I mean, you're both talking about George and how, he understood family. I work for a family company who absolutely understands about family first. You don't usually think about major corporations thinking about family first and people first that way. So do you think that men feel as embraced by whatever their physical or emotional or child challenges might be? Do you think it's just really our, the female side? It's kind of a...
I think we're a product of our upbringing. Your upbringing as a child, your upbringing as a business person. And I feel like if you have come from toxic leadership, maybe that somehow infiltrates your cells. And no matter how you don't want to emulate that behavior, you might still emulate that behavior. George is not, he's single, he doesn't have children, but he's an uncle. He's an extremely proud uncle, and he's very close to his family. And I think that's probably what he brought to his role, what he brings to all his roles. And it's hard to say. I think everybody's so different. It depends on what you have at home too. There's a better chance for a male leader to have a partner at home who's kind of keeping things going and making the meals and taking care of the things that need to get done to run a household than there might be for somebody like us, who it was still expected that we would go home and make the meals and do the bath time and do all the doctor's appointments and still do all those things. I've never had that. I've actually never really had somebody do all that stuff for me. Just like I'm doing all the college applications now, all of that. As much as I'm close to her dad, and that her dad's in a situation at work where he actually doesn't have the flexibility. So we've had to work with that too. He can't just leave and take her to a doctor's appointment at 3 p.m.
Right. Look, when I raised my daughter, it was a village. It took a village.
Mm-hmm.
I was 45 minutes away by car, or even longer if there was traffic. I drove to work every day and parked in the garage in the building in New York, just in case something happened where I needed to get to her. She didn't feel good, whatever it is. Even though I had in-laws around or a spouse or an ex-spouse, I felt the obligation as the mother to be there for her. But I want to turn a little bit to talk a little bit about, our personal challenges and just the dips in life that take you. For me, at what I consider to be one of the pinnacle parts of my career, being the head of the MLC, being the head of the AMP in New York, being, the COO of ABCO and being on the RIAA board, I was diagnosed with cancer. And that took me back a notch, right? Because it's a very humbling experience to feel that you're not in control and everything seems to be going great. The trajectory looks good. And then something comes up that takes you off a step. I'm proud to say I'm 1 year cancer free now, which is great, which is a great thing. But also I just feel that we've all had that experience, that we've had to take stock. And during the time, I was very upfront about the fact that I had cancer and that I told people about it. And there were some people who said to me, don't ever tell anybody you had cancer. Don't ever tell anybody that you were having cancer when you were going through it. There's such a stigma around it. But that wasn't my feeling. Was I got so much support within my company, within my friends, within the industry. Did you have any experiences like that? We'll go with Anita.
I mean, I think that I'm also a cancer survivor, but 10 years ago. And I was pretty open about it. And I never really had anything that you described, anybody telling me don't tell anybody. But I did have a strange experience where, after I was out of the weeds and back and everything, somebody said to me, you weren't really communicating while it was happening. Which is true, because when you get a diagnosis, as I'm sure you know, it's like a whirlwind and you don't stop to give everybody at work, the play-by-play as things are happening to you. So I disappeared and took care of it. And this person said to me, I realized why you didn't say anything. It's because you didn't want to be perceived as less powerful or your power being compromised, which is like so far from the truth. I wasn't thinking about my power. I don't really feel very powerful on a regular day. And it just blew me away that somebody would have thought that, or thought that about anybody who was dealing with an illness. So I think that was the only weird thing that happened. Other than that, people were so supportive. And again, my team rallied and took care of me. And, even after I came back, you still have to go out for a lot of different checkups and follow-up surgeries and all of that stuff. And I always knew that the support was there. And I want to mention, I saw that Maureen Crow, hi Maureen, you made a really good point that it is so different for people who have staff jobs at corporations. Her comment was, freelancers do not have this experience at all. And it's really difficult and really scary to not be able to go visit a sick relative or take the time that you need to deal with your health. So it's something, there's some room for change there for sure.
Definitely. We need a better support structure for
Yeah.
everybody within the industry. And I know, Maureen, the champion that you've become of the Guild of Music Supervisors hopefully provides some of that support structure for all the independent music supervisors, not just in achieving the accolades that you so rightly deserve in awards or the Oscars or Emmys or Grammys or whatever, but also the support structure you need in order to keep your businesses and your life afloat. So I hope that actually pans out and that there are more of those opportunities within the Guild. I'm sure that they definitely are thinking about that. And so now we have to talk about the last year and the pandemic, because it's just, again, it's one of those life-altering moments where everybody had to pivot and figure out what to do. So how has it been managing children, life, teamwork, all from basically your bedroom? And, you know, how has that been challenging and how have you dealt with it? In the beginning, start with the beginning though, because it couldn't have been easy in the beginning. What strategies did you come up with to overcome some of these challenges for your team and stuff?
In the beginning, I felt like it was really important to have as much, connection, because everybody felt so lost and scared, and it was just so unprecedented. So I was having a lot of Zooms, and Zoom was not the normal thing that it is now. But we were talking to each other a lot. And I feel like in some ways, I have more FaceTime, it's virtual FaceTime, of course, with people than I did back when we were in the office. You know how it is, like you may not see somebody who works on your floor unless you happen to go to the kitchen at the same time. You may not see somebody for a week. So in some ways, we are getting a lot more FaceTime with each other now than ever before. I also have to say that it's really hard to multitask when you're on a Zoom. So you really have to be present. You can't be doing 10 other things at the same time because people can see you. So in a way, meeting times are shorter, but they're much more connected, and people are really showing up. They're much more present and engaged, I think, than you are on a conference call where people can be doing other things at the same time. So that's been good. But there's so much Zoom fatigue. I think people are sick of it. Like when you go from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom, they're just stacked throughout the day. It's exhausting, and there's no time to do, your stuff or check your email and all of that. So it's been a real challenge. But there are some real creative things that we've come up with, escape the room kind of things, and just ways to connect.
Yeah, we did some of that too. We had like game nights, and then we had drinking nights, but mostly game nights. And then so trying to keep the team together to really talk to each other. What about you, Allison?
Similar, it was really just trying to keep everyone connected. It took a little bit of time to literally get them connected. That was the other thing, is most of us weren't equipped to work from home. Some of us were. So it was a lot of working with the company to try to get laptops and get people set up and make sure that their phones were working. And, I guess an advantage was that for the most part, production ended. We had a couple of things that were still lingering. So the workload dissipated. So we were able to kind of take the time to regroup. People were able to get their paperwork caught up. We finished a couple of shows we needed to finish. We got everybody situated equipment wise. And then it was just communicating with them a lot. What were they comfortable with? How often did they want to connect? Because I also had to keep in mind, I know the same for both of you, people were processing this trauma in different ways, and you had no idea what was going on in anyone's personal lives. You didn't know if they had a sick family member, if they were sick, or just the fear that was going through them. And then you've got the messaging happening too with the companies that were overgoing changes or ongoing changes, and you'd read deadline, there'd be multiple layoffs are about to occur. So also making sure that people felt that they were informed and that they were supported and that no surprises were coming. And as everything kind of restarted, I felt like at that point we were all in a really good place. We had an established system, and now it is just it's the Zoom fatigue. So we're also always reevaluating. Now we do meetings once a week, but sometimes I'm like, do you feel like it? Let me know. If you guys feel like you just can't do another meeting, then just text me if you need to go over something. So just trying to be flexible while still keeping in mind, now we're exhausted. Now we're a year into this thing. It's been exactly a year. So really just trying to figure out this new normal. And still, we don't know when we're going back. But I
Right.
do think I feel extremely connected to them. I feel like I have more one-on-one time, oddly enough, because I do one-on-one teams with them also, where it's like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a couple of months. Why don't we get together for an hour and
But you
just
have
talk
to
about life?
kind
Yeah.
of
So
have to plan that, right? I mean, that's the
another meeting.
unfortunate thing, right?
Yeah.
You have to not, instead of passing somebody in the hallway and saying, let's catch up, you gotta
You got to
plan the
schedule
catch
it.
up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I mean, you definitely get more information out of people because they're focused on telling you everything that's happening, but it's also, you know, it's like, oh, I got to be on another call. I mean, I definitely can understand that. And we started at ABCO with trying to come up with rules like spaces between appointments to make sure that people had a moment to catch their breath instead of going from appointment to appointment to appointment. Because if you're on Zoom all day long, you got to get to your work too.
Yeah.
It's very hard to manage that and also provide support. And the thing I've learned with my team is when you're working from home, as long as you're doing the work, I don't care if you're doing it at 8 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night, that's your option. As long as you're getting the work done, we have all changed our clocks and our rhythms to adjust to what's happening. Will it be harder for everybody to come back? Uh, Probably. I mean, I'm sitting in the office right now. It didn't like, I didn't throw myself over to get to the office today. I mean, it was like, oh, I'm going. But it's the same with everything. We have to really focus on how are we going to get back to where we were and what do we take away that was a benefit from this experience. And some of that is that before this happened, I don't think I would have been happy having people work from home as much. And I would have felt I needed to see somebody who was working for me. I've really learned to be more trusting of my staff of what they're accomplishing and found different ways to measure how they're accomplishing their work. I mean, do you view their performances any differently? Are you still seeing it the same way?
It was harder when we didn't have a lot going on, and I would have them send me a Friday update just for two reasons. One, because I can't get that coffee chat that happens when you go into the kitchen where they would automatically say, oh gosh, I'm so overwhelmed, I've got this and this and this, where they would just spew without it being anything formal. So I was having them send me updates. What have you done this week? Also, because as projects came back, I didn't want one particular person to be really overwhelmed and another one just didn't really have anything going on. So then I could kind of have a conversation and, hey, would you be willing to kick in and help this person? But now that we're back in full production, I mean, we would know. I mean, we're back to, they've got so much on their plates that they have to manage. They give me their updates during the meetings and when I speak with them. And if I knew, I mean, we would know if nobody wasn't doing their jobs because the songs wouldn't get in the shows and songs wouldn't get clear and all that stuff. So everybody's I mean, they're back. I feel like we're busier than ever. Every year we say we can't get any busier, and yet we do. And we are definitely back to, we are absolutely crazily busy.
That's really good to hear. As a music publisher and a record label, it's really good to hear that you're back to being busier than ever. And I'm sure that, Paramount Plus and also the Peacock network has helped to create some of that extra busyness, right? I mean, there's more content and more content. It's like an insatiable need for content that we've developed over this time period. So, Anita, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I've always been a big proponent of working from home or working remotely and progressive working environments. So I'm thrilled about this. I think it's kind of the way of the future. I love that we're paperless. I feel like we should have been paperless a long time ago, but with everything in the cloud, you really can work everywhere, which is amazing. You never have to look for stuff. Just the concept of everybody having laptops and no more landlines, like everybody's using their cell, like all these technology changes that have been made, it really should, I really am a huge proponent of it. I think everybody can do it, and there are people who don't want to do it, and that's fine too. But the flexibility, I think, makes us a much more desirable place to work, a much more supportive environment. And, as a working mom, I just love being around. Like, I've got childcare and everything, but just to be around and see what's going on, it just makes me a happier executive. So I think it's great.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And thank goodness that the technology is in place now at this time, because that, if this was 5 years ago, this, it would have been a different situation and how we would have got here. So how quickly somebody like Microsoft got Teams up to speed.
Yeah.
And, like Zoom was there, but then like everybody else came to the party just a little step behind, but really sped it up so that we could all function. And it's really been helpful. Absolutely. And I definitely appreciate the paperless environment. I can't I used to always try to review licenses in paper, and that was just, I've been able to adjust much better. So I want to talk a little bit about your day-to-day business, music licensing, finding music, and working with composers, especially how we can lift up other women composers and other women producers in this business. Anita, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Finding music, women composers has been something that's been a big priority for me for a while. I think when you take a look at the industry as a whole, we have a long way to go. It's starting to get a little bit better, but there's still a long, long way to go. When you think about the first woman composer, we've just had the first woman composer win an Oscar ever for the Joker. Was that last year? It was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Last year was already COVID. Yeah, we've got to do better. There's so many talented women out there. And I think we're finally at a place where there are so many organizations that are supporting that. We're able to connect the artists with the people who would be sourcing them and hiring them. But there's still so much that we have to do. But it's really important. It's really important to us, to have authentic voices creating the music that we're putting in our shows.
And so there's a lot of people asking, how do they get you music? I mean, we had a side conversation earlier about when we all started in the business and you had to have an LP. There was no, digital source. You had to find the music. I mean, how do people get you the music today that actually makes a point? That it's not just something you go, oh, okay, something that's useful.
Well, one thing before I'm going to answer that, but Julie Lipsius asked a question about, does this open up opportunities for remote? It does, absolutely. Our interns, we've continued to have interns all through this pandemic, and they've been interning for us from wherever they're living. We've got people in New York, we've got them in Chicago, I think we have someone in Colorado. We just hired Ruth Barrett to score our new Law and Order series. She's going to be doing that from the UK, although we post in Los Angeles. So I think the exciting thing is that very much so, I think we're going to still have opportunities for remote. I think our interns, we're still going to be able to have interns remotely. We're going to obviously continue to go on with composers, music supervisors. I don't think people have to physically be in the same place anymore. other than when hiring a composer or hiring a music supervisor, it's going to come down to what producers want, as far as, they probably want to have an in-person meeting at a certain point, or maybe they do most have moved away from in-person spotting sessions, but some might still want them to be there physically. So it's all going to be case by case. As far as getting music to us, I mean, I've always gone with the good old fashioned research, like get a sense of what we're working on, what our shows are, do some research, find out what the tone is. You can really find that information anywhere, what kind of songs are being used in it, watch some episodes, and then send a targeted note with, in the subject header, this is the show I'm hitting you up about, or I've got this great composer. This is why I think this person is great. Generalities, I think, get lost more often because of the just sheer magnitude of contacts that we have trying to be made with us. But if we see something thoughtfully curated, then that will get our attention a lot more. If you think you've got a composer that would be great for something, just find out what project we have that might be appropriate, and do your pitch too, because if they haven't done anything, that's the other thing, is we have to consider what that means. Do we team them up with somebody else to mentor them? But that's, and then we find it, and then you get music from you, Alisa. I get it from labels, I get it from managers, we get it from song pluggers. I mean, it comes from everywhere. We get it from doing our own listening. But,
right.
Yeah.
It's challenging, and I understand how it's challenging for up and coming artists that don't have the known song necessarily that you're actually seeking for, that have a tone or a theme or whatever, and how they, all those Law and Order shows, they don't use a real ton of one song or whatever, a show, an episode. It's hard to figure out how to fit into that and get to deliver the right music to the right person. I totally understand that. It's the same on, on every side of the spectrum with that. I mean, Anita, you at one time were kind of creating a music database with indie artists, and it was a long time ago, I think. We talked about that.
Yeah, I think I don't think that exists anymore, but building on Allison's point about the generalities not working very well, I completely agree with that. Like, we are inundated, with pitches, and the ones that stand out are the ones that are really targeted. And I always use the same example when I'm talking about this, but when Prince passed away, we were doing all this news coverage, and somebody put together, knowing how difficult Prince music is to get rights to, sent me a list saying, you must be producing all these news shows and obituary packages for him. Here's a bunch of music that's inspired by him that would really work well for that. And it was like, it saved my life. She made me look like a hero, because I just sent that to the news producers and everybody was thrilled, and they used the music and it was wonderful. And that's the best example. Like, it was so helpful, so good, and the quality was there. It was really great music. And it wasn't sound-alikes or anything like that. It was just music that would work really well for that type of content. So that's the opposite of a generality. It was just really great.
And so you want people to deliver to you MP3s with data in them. You're not going to click on a YouTube or SoundCloud link and start trolling through anything. You want everything specifics, that you can use it right out of the box. And
the other thing that, unfortunately, if we don't know the person that's saying it to us, we also don't know what the rights are to it. So we have to still vet that. We have to find out who has the ownership, who are the writers, is it published? Is it within a label? Can they speak on their behalf? So there is a lot of legwork that has to go into any solicitation from someone that we don't know. And doing a little bit of extra research goes a long way. I think that's one of the things they have to come out of the gate with is, I warrant and represent that I can pitch this to you. I know that we don't have a relationship.
And also not sending, 100 songs, like a couple of songs,
A couple of your best songs.
couple of your best songs for the project. Yes.
Definitely. And totally understand that. And yeah, absolutely understand that. I do want to go back because I know, Anita, that you're very involved in She Is the Music, and what activity they're doing to help lift up female songwriters and composers, because one of the things we had mentioned was, the film and television industry has a lot of female leadership within the corporate structure of those companies. There isn't as much female leadership other than, one head of a major corporation and publishing, and everybody else that kind of owns their own company and has done fabulously leading the charge. It's been quite the struggle for women in publishing and record labels to kind of, and music. Even today, the Annenberg report that came out, or yesterday came out, that said that women in the studio and on the airwaves are still not achieving what they need to achieve. What kind of things can film and television do to help accomplish that?
Yeah. So She's the Music is a wonderful organization. I wish I was more involved than is the reality, which is just for time. But that organization is really focused on women in the studio, women engineers, producers, getting songwriting camps together to really support women songwriters to create music for artists. And they're doing incredible work. For our ends, I think the key is really, matching female composers and music supervisors to projects. And, if you have a director that always uses the same guy because they've been together forever, I completely respect that and understand that. But maybe they would consider taking somebody on, as a co-composer or an apprentice or something like that, just to open the door for people who normally can't get through the door and find opportunities. So I'm trying to be a loud voice at my company to, when you're thinking about diversity, remember to think about it in terms of music creation for our shows, not just, the producers and directors. It goes, every job, it impacts every job on the show.
It's a hard thing it's a big challenge, right, Allison? I mean, everybody comes with, they have history.
Yeah,
they have
they
history
do.
with people.
Yeah, and that's why I think the fact that Dick Wolf just hired this female composer is amazing. I mean, he's got such a rich legacy, and Mike Post has been a huge part of that, as has Atlee Orvison. And to get it, that came from him. So to get that call was such an achievement, like such a triumph. We were all, the whole studio was just like, woof, when we found out who they wanted. But it's tough, obviously when you've got a showrunner and they have a history with someone, they've got a lot on their plate. That's the other thing we're dealing with. It's not just music, they're dealing with writers, they're dealing with locations, budgets, who are the actors going to be? And there's so much that goes into a production. So when you ask them to maybe take a beat and try to trust and maybe go outside of that comfort zone and give someone a chance, to them, it oftentimes means, oh God, well then I'm going to have to worry about something I wasn't going to have to worry about. But if I just give it to this person who I've worked with on a million shows, I don't have to worry about music. I'm good. I can go ahead and put my focus over here on the talent. So that's, there's so many things that go into it that are obstacles for us. And they're open, I send people for meetings, but it really does oftentimes just go to who they know. And even with some of the new voices we have across our shows, because I have to say we're getting diversified in the names that you're seeing across all the studios. it's still kind of favoring the same silo of people. So when you, as we're getting more diverse voices, it's still the same diverse voices. So the challenge is, can we diversify that even more so it's still not creating another insular bubble like we've always had? Like now we need women. You know, we've got diverse males, now we need diverse females, and we still need females. You know, we have a few more than we used to have, but it's still very underrepresented. And it's not just myself and Anita. I mean, you know, different counterparts are saying the same thing. Everybody's trying, you know, everybody's really working hard at this. We just need to keep the momentum going and just keep putting them up for things.
So Tom wanted to know what your favorite sync placements were. I mean, for me, being a publisher and a record label, my favorite placements are always the ones that are the songs that had never been licensed before, because that gives an artist or a composer an opportunity to generate income or have it, you know, be placed in something. We've had a lot of benefits with shows like Godfather of Harlem, who have dug deep into the older part of our catalog, the gospel part of our catalog, and really pulled out some gems that we've sent over. And those kind of placements really, you know, resonate with me in terms of trying to make money and help support artists and composers who don't generate a lot of income from sync. So what are some of your favorite sync placements?
One of my favorite placements in the past couple of years for TV Sync, Michael Hill was the music soup, and he placed Whole of the Moon as the series finale for The Affair, covered by Fiona Apple. And I love that so much. And it's such a great use, because he used the song in the series, and it just generated renewed interest from a song from the 80s that was maybe a little bit obscure, and she did such a cool take on it, and it was the most perfect song for that. I love everything about it. And there are so many, but that for me is like such a big standout one.
He's great at that, Michael. He's
Yeah.
always really digging into catalogs. He's always looking for something off the beaten path, definitely.
Yeah.
Allison?
Boy, I mean, I really like you, Alisa. I really like championing the underdogs. So, I mean, I've done so many placements of Canadian artists over the years that I was really proud of, that I knew firsthand how it was impacting them, if it was keeping them on the road a little bit longer, or, you know, some of them had children and finding out that it was helping them put food on the table, or they could get back in the studio and record more music. I probably would have said it was like a Katy Perry song or something like that at the beginning of her career. But I have one thing I did about a decade ago that just keeps coming back, which kind of makes me chuckle, which is I had a song created for The Office called That One Night, that was in an episode called The Dinner Party, where Michael's girlfriend has been having a relationship with her assistant, and he's got his own band. And at the dinner party, she plays his band's song, and it's just absolutely awful. And I asked one of the members in the New Panographers to write it for me, who was a really good friend at the time. And it just keeps coming back. I mean, there was an article last year about that song from The Office. So it's that's the one I'm the most proud of now. The one that was the cheesiest just worked for hire.
That's awesome. So, Tom, I know that we have hit the 1 hour mark. Were there any other questions that we missed in the chat that people wanted to address?
In general, they all want to know, how can they get closer to you three so they can get syncs? And if you want to put your LinkedIn profile or your email address or whatever in the chat to attract that, God bless you. You'll probably get some great submissions, I would hope. I just want to thank you three. This has been awesome. And you've been seeing the commentary in the chat. Every single one of these people has been totally impressed and inspired with what you've had to share as mothers and as women in this industry. And I just want to thank you for just being awesome and sharing your wisdom. So really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for doing this today.
Well, thank you for the platform. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm
so
having a lot of fun making this up as I go. And as you heard me at the top of the show, we're celebrating women all month long. Tomorrow we come back with Molly Newman in the hot seat. Molly's the president of Song Trust in New York. I promise you she's going to deliver the goods as well. So tune into that one as well. And with that, folks, I'm going to wrap it up and simply say, be nice to each other, get a shot, and in the meantime, wear a mask.
Thank you, Tom.
thank you.
Take care.
Take care,
Thank
folks.
you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.